You are now listening to the Over the Hill podcast.
Right, what's happening, people? Welcome to episode number 11 of the Over the Hill podcast. Random one today, flying solo for the first time. I did have a special guest lined up over the weekend, but some plans fell through. We couldn't get together to record, so that one's going to be rescheduled. And I didn't want to just bring in any random guest to kind of just sit around and talk nonsense without being really prepared or without any, without having any sort of idea of what to say and, the conversation and stuff. Lastminute.com isn't really my thing. So as much as the conversations on here are casual and unplanned, and, I don't write any questions down or anything like that. I just wing it, much like I do with life. I didn't just want to drag someone else in and put them in that environment. So you've got just me. And I guess it's really going to test my chops as a podcast host to see if I can sit here and talk for at least an hour uninterrupted without any sort of anyone to bounce off, which is kind of what the guest thing's about. It's really easy to sit down with people and just chat shit and have a conversation and just record it. I had this conversation a few times with people and they're just like, how can you sit there and just talk for 3 hours? And it's like, well, you don't go out with your friends and sit around a table and talk for 3 hours? Do you all sit in silence? Are you mutes? So it's not difficult for me to sit in a room, and the last episode is proof of that. Sit in a room with someone I know, or even if I don't know them that well, and actually just go on and on for hours. The last episode was 4 hours long. Don't worry, I will not be giving you 4 hours of just me talking today. I would never do that to you, I promise. So yeah, a lot of things to get into today. I want to do a bit of a segment on the past weekend's events in UFC and boxing as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about combat sports in this episode. Look forward to the future and stuff like that. And, I know a lot of people know me as, with these podcasts, especially being, the music guy, and big part of my life is radio. But, if you're a long time listener or if you've heard me on other podcasts, you will hear that I'm a big MMA fan. Not so much a big boxing fan, but a big MMA fan. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. But I looked this morning online and was looking for some inspiration for trending topics and stuff. And, everyone who knows me knows I'm quite political and I speak my mind with regards to the bullshit that this government pulls and things like that. So I won't go in too hard with stuff like that because I'll probably alienate a few people and upset a few people as well. But, fuck the Tories and that. But I went on Twitter and had a little look at the trends online and whatever. And everyone was absolutely fucking furious about the finale of Line of Duty. And by finale, I think it is the last ever episode. So it was funny to me to read it because as a Game of Thrones fan, there's a couple of parallels there. One of the parallels is that I am one of these people that has never ever seen an episode of Line of Duty. And during the height of Game of Thrones, for whatever reason, cunts on Twitter and everywhere else felt it was the greatest thing in the world to point out that they'd never ever seen an episode of Game of Thrones. Have I told you? Am I the only person? Am I the only person who's never seen an episode of Game of Thrones? Am I the only No, Sharon, you're not. All right? Game of Thrones has been watched by a few million people, and there's several billion people on this planet. The amount of people that have seen Game of Thrones, there's more people that live in New York as a state, not necessarily as a city, but as a state, or even as the UK. Less than the population of the UK have seen Game of Thrones. Most people in the world, even like in massive countries across the world, don't even have access to television. There's still plenty of people out there who haven't got access to television, let alone HBO or Sky Atlantic. So no, Sharon, you're not the only person who's never seen an episode of Game of Thrones. I just had to get that off my chest, fucking hell. But I am one of them people who's never seen an episode of Line of Duty. Not that I feel the need to post about it or talk about it. So there's that parallel, which is quite funny to me. So I was going to start messaging people who were doing the Game of Thrones thing. But no, I'm not that petty. Well, I am, but who has time? The other parallel is obviously that everyone went on and on and on about Line of Duty until the very last episode, which happens a fair bit with shows. You know, you can't take for granted that every show you watch is going to have a good ending. Anyone who's a fan of, you know, How I Met Your Mother, for example, everyone loved that show and they fucking hated the ending. It's not a show I particularly got into. I watched a few episodes here and there and I didn't really care either way, but I do know the feeling of when you're invested in a show and the ending is either shit or takes you completely by surprise. Now, obviously, I don't know anything about Line of Duty. I don't know any of the characters. All I know is there's a big drama over someone called H. I was thinking the blonde fella from Steps, but clearly not. And something called AC-12. I don't know what that is. You know, sounds like a nickname for someone who plays for an American football team. Fuck knows. Never seen Line of Duty. Not to say I won't watch it, but everyone saying the last episode shit kind of makes me not want to bother. But with that being said, the parallel is there with Game of Thrones, and Game of Thrones is one of the greatest TV shows of all time. Make no mistake about it. It really is a cultural phenomenon. It's one of them shows, again, HBO, you know, a show I want to talk about is Sopranos, and we'll touch on it briefly because that had a weird ending as well. But Game of Thrones, just another HBO masterpiece. Aside from, I will admit, aside from the last episode, and there was a couple of things in the last episode that really annoyed me. One of them being the story of it at the end. You know, it should have just gone down the traditional route. The person we all wanted to become the hero becomes the fucking hero, and we're done with it. You know, and that's it. Bottom line, finished, finito, all done. Instead of that, we got what we got. And, you know, I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen Game of Thrones, because even though the ending is shit, I would still recommend that you go and watch it. Now, I will give a few spoilers for Game of Thrones with what I'm about to say, but a lot of people shit on the whole last season. You know, apart in the last couple of seasons, there was some timing issues, like, you know, how did Gendry run back so fast, and how the fuck did she get the dragon up there so fast, and you know, like, there were silly things like that, you know, that just kind of, I think it was just episode cramming for whatever reason, you know, budget constraints, time constraints, whatever. But the last season I thought was really, really good. In fact, one of the best episodes in the entirety of Game of Thrones is episode 2 of the final season. Is absolutely outstanding. It's an absolute masterpiece of an episode. A lot of stories get tied up. There's a lot of emotion there. There's a build when you know what's coming. You know what's about to happen. It's an emotional... It put me on an emotional roller coaster. The scene with Brienne, the reveal of R plus L equals J, you know, that's kind of a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler. For those of you who've seen it, you'll know what I mean. You know, so many different, you know, the preparation for the final battle, the second to last battle. It was just great. It was just great all round. And obviously the Battle of Winterfell, fuck me. What an episode, you know. The battles in Game of Thrones, you know, whether it's Battle of the Bastards, which is probably the best one, you know, Winterfell. I know it took a lot of flack because it was dark and stuff, but there are, you know, there's been episodes that have been released on the internet since then, have been brightened and stuff. So, you know, you do get to see a lot more. And yeah, I've gone back and watched it several times, and just wow. It's just a roller coaster. The music in the final scenes as well. Oh, fucking brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And, you know, people got really, really pissed. Where people got really pissed was episode 5, the penultimate episode, where one of the main characters flips out, goes batshit crazy, and just goes on a murderous rampage and just kills thousands of people. Now, how did you not see that coming, first of all? Because she was fucking crazy from early. She was burning motherfuckers from early. So how you didn't see that, I'll never know. For people to sit there and say it's out of character, you're not paying attention. What fucking show were you watching? Do you know what her name is? It's incredible. Do you know what the name of the series really is? You know, it's insane. It's absolutely insane that people were so vexed about that. And, you know, I get it. You don't want to see one of your favourites go bad, but it was always on the cards. It was always on the cards. But yeah, for me, the final episode was a letdown. It was very rushed, and yeah, just wasn't very good. With that being said, Game of Thrones is still one of the best shows of all time, and I'm sure Line of Duty is every single little bit as good as people thought it was for the majority of the rest of the seasons. You know, no show's perfect. And, you know, the closest show that's ever come to it, in my opinion, is The Sopranos. And even The Sopranos had the weirdest ending. And again, if you haven't seen The Sopranos, go fuck yourself, first and foremost. But if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it with the last episode and my theory behind it and stuff. Maybe we could do a proper Sopranos episode. In actual fact, I've got a friend who's a Sopranos anorak like myself. So maybe we'll do that at some point and go into the ending of The Sopranos and what it means. But it pissed a lot of people off. There's not many shows that have ended perfectly, and you're never really, in today's internet day and age as well, you're never really gonna end a show in a way that keeps absolutely everybody happy. I think that's important to remember as well. There was a lot of people I knew that were quite satisfied with the Game of Thrones ending, for example. There was a lot of people that were fans of endings of various shows. I mean, The Sopranos, it was weird. It was a weird ending, but the more I watch it and the more I go back and look at it and the more I have my own theory on what happened, yeah, makes sense. It actually makes sense. If anything, I think it's a very good ending. But yeah, you know, it happens over time. I think The Wire had a good ending. Breaking Bad, the ending wasn't bad of Breaking Bad. I did enjoy the El Camino that they brought out with Jesse Pinkman afterwards, a little after story for Jesse. I thought that was pretty cool. It wasn't exactly the best thing in the world, but it was good. It was good fun to watch. But yeah, guys, if you're a Line of Duty fan, just chill the fuck out. It's not the end of the world. You didn't waste your time because you were entertained and you went on a roller coaster the whole time through that show. I'm saying that as someone who's not seen it. But, you know, as someone who's seen shows that have had disappointing endings, I wouldn't change Game of Thrones for the world. You know, I can go back and watch the Battle of Blackwater, for example. I can go back and watch that episode a dozen times. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Battle of the Bastards, as we mentioned, you know, the attack on the castle, Castle Black. So much on there, and just one-liners from the likes of Bronn and Tyrion and stuff like that. Just a great series, just a great series. And, you know, you can't let that final episode ruin, you know, 7-8 years of just complete cinematic mastery. You just can't. So yeah, chill the fuck out. Don't worry about it. There'll be another series along soon that I'm sure you'll get annoyed or upset at. If not, go and watch that season of Married at First Sight Australia and get your knickers in a twist about Jess, you know. Have fun if you really enjoy being angry that much. No, that was a shit show, Jesus Christ. But yeah, there's so much out there. There's so much good content, and it's why I want to say thank you to people who've been listening to the podcast, because to be able to take time out of your day with all of the content and all of the movies and stuff that are out and the series and stuff, to be able to sit and listen to me for a couple of hours, you know, once a week is, you know, I'm really appreciative. I think it's fantastic, and yeah, keep it up. Keep up the support. You know, speaking of content, I've been watching a lot of Grey's Anatomy recently. I hadn't seen it before, and my partner I've mentioned on the show before, she's a healthcare worker. She works in a hospital in the city, and she's a big fan of Grey's. She's watched it all the way through ever since the start, and I kind of picked it up at the end of I think season 16 that aired, and it kind of ended abruptly because COVID hit, obviously, and they shut down and stuff, but it's back now, and obviously they blend a lot of reality into the series, so they're currently dealing with the pandemic in it. So obviously it's quite a tough watch for her at times, and I've really enjoyed being with her to watch it. And also the spin-off Station 19, which is, if anyone's seen it, is also a brilliant show. I've been watching them both with her, and the trouble with it is there's such a long backstory. It's like season 17 now. But there's such a long backstory with so many characters that things happen and people come back in flashbacks and people get mentioned. And I'm like, who the fuck was that? And she has to explain it. So rather than her explain every single little detail to me, I've actually gone back to season 1, which is on Amazon Prime. It's up there for free up until the last season. And yeah, I've gone back to the start and I've binge watched it. I'm on like season 7 now or something, which is a bit nuts. Yeah, so I'm getting into it now. I know who's who. I know a lot of the backstories. A lot more of what I have been watching makes sense. And fuck me, what a show. What a show. Unbelievable. Just, again, an emotional roller coaster at times. Really, really was. Yeah, I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it again. But yeah, some of the stuff that happens to the patient, some of the stuff that happens to the doctors, the losses, there's a couple of episodes of like where shootings happen and stuff like that. And again, I won't spoil anything or give too much away, but 100% worth a watch. If you ever get time and you want to go back and watch something. But as I say, it can be quite deep and it can be quite brutal to watch, especially some of the surgery scenes are a bit like, Jesus fucking Christ. Whoever the makeup team is on that show is doing a seriously good job. But yeah, so just a couple of little recommendations there. A few other things I watched recently. I watched a show called Manhunt on Netflix. It's been out for a couple of years now. The first series was all about the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. There is a documentary about him on Netflix, but Manhunt is like a made series. Paul Bettany plays him. He plays a Unabomber, and yeah, that was excellent. Season 2 is about Richard Jewell, he was a guy who was a security guard working at the Olympic Games in Atlanta in 1996, and a bomb went off. But before the bomb went off, he spotted the bag where the bomb was in, and he managed to clear the area. And now a bomb went off, killed a couple of people. But if it wasn't for him, hundreds probably would have died. And he somehow managed to get framed for it. And I say somehow, it was the fault of the news reporters and various other outlets and stuff, and they were just trying to point the finger at him. But yeah, the second season of Manhunt is all about him and the story about what happened to him. And there is a film called Richard Jewell that Clint Eastwood made that's probably worth a watch as well. It's something I haven't got around to watching myself yet, but now I've seen the series Manhunt, it's season 2 on Netflix about him, and now I've seen that, I'm probably going to go back and watch the film, in all honesty, because I really, really enjoyed that series. I really enjoyed the show. So much on Netflix that is pretty good. We've just finished watching Glow, which I mentioned a couple of episodes ago. I hope that gets renewed for a season 4, because it can't end like that. And that's not to say that it was a bad ending. That's just to say that it ended obviously with the idea of it continuing, but due to some cuts and COVID and everything else, it's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit, which is, not ideal. Not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but we are where we are in these current times. Obviously, a lot of shows have been pulled and not really a lot you can do about it. It is what it is. But yeah, definitely worth a watch. Glow. It's very funny. It's definitely, I thought it'd be a little bit more one for the girls, but it's not. It's actually, it's a really, really good watch. I also watched the series Waco, which was about, obviously, if anyone knows about the Waco disaster in the early 90s, David Koresh and the cult in Waco, Texas, the Branch Davidians. That was on Netflix at one point. I think it was Paramount that made it. It was on Netflix at one point. It's now no longer on there, but I watched it because I've got my trusty Fire Stick with every single fucking series on it. Don't ask me where I got it, because I won't tell you. Yeah, the Waco series was brilliant. A lot of the cast from Boardwalk Empire, Michael Shannon and a few others, are in that. And yeah, well worth a watch. Definitely worth a watch. It's very good, but the last couple of episodes are really quite dark. When, if anyone who knows the story about Waco, I would kind of suggest maybe looking it up before you watch it, because it's not a nice story. But the show itself, wow, brilliant. Really, really enjoyed it. And it's the one thing that's sad about lockdown ending is I probably won't spend as much time vegging in front of the TV as I have done over winter, watching various shows that I never got around to watching. There's a few that I still haven't got around to watching that I need to catch up on. Someone's recommended to me The Boys on Amazon Prime. It's an Amazon series. It's supposed to be really, really good. A little bit of a superhero thing, but with a twist. So that's one I've got saved on the watch list. But currently really addicted to Grey's Anatomy, so I'm ploughing through it. Shouts out to Blaze. Big shouts out to the former guest on the podcast, DJ Blaze. I know he loves a bit of Grey's as well. We had a conversation about it off air after we finished recording a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, anyway, rambling on about random TV shows. Probably get into a little bit of UFC and boxing. Interesting for me. I actually sat and watched a bit of boxing this weekend, which I don't usually do. ever since I became a big MMA fan, big UFC fan, back in the early 2000s, boxing's kind of been dead to me now. I was a huge boxing fan. So much so, in fact, if you go back through the BBC website archives about 15 years, there's an article that I actually had published on there when I was about 16 years old, talking about Winky Wright being the best pound for pound fighter on the planet. I could sit and waffle about boxing all day. Those early 2000s for me, especially in British boxing, the days of Ricky Hatton, Joe Calzaghe, etc., was, it was an obsession for me, and I liked UFC at the time, but boxing was still number one. So, I'd like to preface my boxing review with a little bit of my background in fandom of the sport. So we had the Derek Chisora versus Joseph Parker fight at the weekend. And I was out having a drink on Friday night. One of my friends is a really big boxing fan, and I said I thought Parker would just take him to school and just beat the brakes off him. But it didn't happen like that. All respect to Chisora, still doing the damn thing at, 37, 38 years of age. Looked really good, came out firing, dropped him in the first round, or first 10 seconds of the fight. And then it was back and forth for the rest of it. And yeah, I think Parker edged out the decision. Definitely wasn't a robbery by any means, but it was a hell of a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, decent. I wouldn't have paid pay-per-view for it though. I'm not a big fan of these, these cards being headlined by random heavyweight fights, against a number, I don't know, where Parker is now, the number 5, 6 guy in the world, and Derek Chisora, who's, got 11 losses on his record, 12 now, I believe. So, yeah, for me, having to pay 20 odd quid or whatever it was for that card, not really a fan of that, to be perfectly honest. Usually you've got to have world titles involved. Now, world titles were involved in the co-main event. Katie Taylor against, I believe her name's Natasha Jonas. I'm not that up to date with names in boxing these days, as I say, but watched it. Yeah, good fight in general. Women's boxing, it's not a sexist thing, because women's MMA I find incredible. In actual fact, a lot of women's MMA fights are better than men's MMA fights. So I'm all for women in combat sports, and Larissa Shields, who's one of the other main boxing champions in the women's divisions, is she's actually joined MMA and she'll be fighting in PFL very soon. But women's boxing to me just isn't very entertaining. I don't enjoy it. I really find it kind of sloppy. I like Katie Taylor as a person. Obviously, what she's done in that division is great, but yeah, for me, it's just not the one. I don't really find it that entertaining. But this was a good fight by any standards. A lot of people have said Katie Taylor's kind of been gifted decisions in her last few fights. That wasn't the case this time. She was the clear and obvious winner in this. Good fight though. Good fight overall. Elsewhere on the card, I think Chris Eubank Jr. won. No real interest in watching him. All the promise in the world when he first started, but who's he fighting? Who are these people that he's fighting? Ricky Hatton's son had his second fight. Apparently he was very good. I didn't watch it. Maybe I'll start watching him if he comes along. I was a massive fan of Ricky Hatton, and Matthew Hatton as well, for that matter. He was a great fighter too, his uncle. So yeah, all in all, as I say, I watched the two main fights, and yeah, for boxing, it was good. I'm not a massive boxing fan anymore, by any stretch of the imagination, although I did used to be. But yeah, good fights. Coming up at the weekend, obviously you've got Billy Joe Saunders versus Canelo Alvarez. Be interesting to see what happens. A lot of people have said for a long time that someone like Billy Joe is the exact style that will give Canelo trouble. I mean, I hope so. Who really knows? Canelo just seems to step it up a gear every time. I mean, I'm still a little bit bitter because I do believe that, I think we all believe that Golovkin Triple G won that, at least that first fight, if not the second one as well. I mean, he absolutely walked that first fight as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't even close. The embarrassment what happened with the judges' scorecards that night. And again, that's another reason I'm not a fan of boxing, There are mistakes that get made in some UFC events, but MMA is a very young sport and it's very easy to misjudge things. And, a lot of the mistakes get made are when they fucking have Adelaide Bird there, who is the same person that completely botched the Canelo Triple G event. For whatever reason she botched it, who knows? But, as far as I'm concerned, should never ever be allowed to judge anything again. There's a shambles, whether there was whether there was something iffy going on there, or she just doesn't understand combat sport. And again, that's not a jibe at her because she's a woman, because there's plenty of good women judges out there, and as I say, loads of great women fighters as well. But yeah, she shouldn't ever be allowed to judge a fight again, in my opinion. And that night was a shambles. And when she's been involved in UFC, she's had a few overly questionable decisions as well. So, but yeah, the corruption side of things in boxing, so painfully obvious. I'm not a fan of it. It's one of the reasons that for me, UFC, MMA, but UFC in particular, is the number one combat sport on the face of the earth. And considering it's only been around since 1993, in its current form, the sky's the limit. With boxing, I think the limit is the sky. It's going to be great to have. It's going to be great to have Fury against Joshua. It'd be a big spectacle and everything else. And there are some really good fighters at heavyweight. Deontay's obviously still got a lot to offer, and Andrew Riz is there, and Dillian White, etc. And yeah, it's still great to watch. But paying £20 every couple of weeks to watch another Eddie Hearn card, full of pretty much nobodies or washed up fighters. I know Callum Ben, I'm not sure if it was an Eddie Hearn card he was on the other night, but I know people talking about he was fighting, and I was such a fan of Nigel Ben, and that's why I'm going to watch it. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I'm not paying 20 quid to sit there and watch him beat up someone who should have retired 10 years ago. Not a fan of it. But as going back to it, Canelo versus Saunders coming up this weekend, and yeah, interesting. I can't see anyone beating Canelo, at least not for another good few years yet. He is the best for a reason, whether it's because of whether it's because of those dodgy beef tacos, who knows? But Billy Joe Saunders, all the love and support to him in the world. I hope he gets it done. I just can't see it happening. Speaking of the next couple of weeks, there's a big UFC coming up that I'm going to talk about. UFC 262, I believe it is. But I want to recap this past weekend's events and also talk briefly about UFC 261 as well. So, as I speak, we're fresh off the back of UFC Fight Night. Reyes versus, I think it's Prohaka, I think it's how you say his name. I'm sure there's going to be some MMA fan out there telling me I'm wrong. I think it's Yuri Prohaka, sorry. It's for a distinctly Eastern European flavour about this card, actually. So I'm probably going to butcher quite a few names with regards to the fights that I did watch. I must say, Randa Marcos on the undercard got disqualified for an up kick. It's a definite disqualification. People were talking about the woman she was fighting. I can't remember her name. It was her debut fight. She looks pretty good. But they were talking about her play acting when she got hit with the up kick. Listen, same with the Aljamain Sterling thing. If they're acting, they're acting. But fact of the matter is, as a professional fighter with that many fights under your belt, you should know the rules of MMA. There's no excuses. If you did something illegal in boxing, like a deliberate punch to the nuts or back of the head or whatever, or kidneys and that, like if the other person milks it for all it's worth, then they milk it for all it's worth. You as a professional in your sport should understand the rules. And, people can't then moan if people just bow out and say, fuck it, I'll get the win, see you later, not interested in fighting this person again. With regards to Randa Marcos, I wish people would stop pretending she's going to be something. I can't see it ever happening. Seems a very nice person, obviously puts the work in, but, a lot of people, guys especially, just fawn over her because she's got red hair and she looks a bit naughty. That's the reality of it. Stop pretending otherwise. She's got, a stupid amount of losses on her record. I think she's the first female fighter to ever lose more than 10 fights. So, yeah, it's not going anywhere for Randa Marcos, and I hope she has avenues to find something else to do with her career, because I can't see it being much longer that she sticks around in the UFC, if not MMA in total, overall. So, but yeah, on to the main card of this event. So UFC Fight Night, Reyes versus Prohaka. I'm going to get it wrong 20 times. I'll say it wrong whilst talking about the same fight. Another name I'm probably going to get wrong, Merab Dawashvili, I think is how you pronounce Dawalishvili or something like that. You guys can look up his name and try and pronounce it if you want. Against Cody Stamann, or Starman, however these Americans like to say these things. I'm butchering everything today. It's very early in the morning that I'm recording this, so just feel lucky that I'm even talking about this stuff. Great fight. These two have been scheduled to fight, I believe, twice before, and it's fallen through for various reasons. Really good fight. Murad picks up the win, obviously, by decision. But yeah, great, really entertaining. Lots of takedowns, a hell of a lot of striking. Both guys demonstrating a really good chin. Just great, high energy, fast paced. Not a second without action. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. Can't fault it. Really enjoyed it. If you get an opportunity to go back and watch that fight, it's the first fight in the main event and the main card, so definitely go and give that a watch. Sean Strickland against Krzysztof Jotko. I watched bits and bobs of it. I kind of drifted in and out. I was doing a few other bits whilst I was rewatching it. So yeah, it looked like a decent fight. Strickland picks up the win on he moves. Jotko's still there or thereabouts. He's not going anywhere for a while, so be interesting to see if these two meet again further down the road. But yeah, Sean Strickland still moving on, still moving and grooving, keeping on. So yeah, Sean Strickland picks up the win, decision, round number 3. Let's have a look at what else was on here. Ion Kutalaba, obviously someone who's been involved in some funny decisions as of late. A lot of people have got to know him possibly for the wrong reasons. Against Dustin Jacoby or Jacoby. Again, there's a distinctly Eastern European flavour about this card, isn't there? Where was it supposed to be held originally is what I want to know. Yeah, a draw. I've got to be honest, I didn't see the fight. It's the one fight I haven't been able to sit and watch back yet. I think psychologically, because I know it was a draw, I kind of just skipped past it. I can't remember. I had the show on and I was sitting watching it, and I think I might have, gone to the Kazi or gone to make a snack or whatever and come back and it had just been finishing up. So I didn't see it. From what I've seen online, it kind of was fairly evenly matched. So yeah, sometimes there has to be draws. You're never going to get a definitive answer all the time. Sometimes you have to draw. I know the Americans hate it because they never have draws in their sports. They go into overtime in just basic matches, So, yeah, they never ever seem to have a draw. They never have like a point sharing situation like we do over here with, even rugby has draws. Football, obviously, every single week we have loads of draws. So, yeah, I think it annoys people when it happens. But no, you do get draws in fights. Of course you get draws in fights. What you don't get draws in are fights like Triple G versus Canelo 1, which is, but yeah. Co-main event. Giga Chikadze, another Georgian, him and Mirab representing for the Georgian Mandem on the card. Yeah, Cub Swanson, man, legend, absolute legend, top guy, really cool fella. Glad he's back after, I think he's had one fight since injury, but he was out for a while. Really glad to see him still fighting, but yeah, not a good night for Cub by any stretch of the imagination. Just over a minute into the fight, Giga hits him with the liver kick from hell and just shuts him down. Completely shut him down. His whole body went. He was on his knees in seconds. Giga jumped in and landed some shots, but he was just making sure the job was done. It was never going to be necessary. That liver kick was fucking disgusting. Hit him when you saw the replay, because a lot of the time when people kick, you'll see them hit with the roof of their foot, sort of like a whipping sort of roundhouse kick. It looked to me like it landed with the ball of the foot. So the ball of the foot just under the toes, which is brutal, absolutely brutal, right in the liver. So interesting to see what he does at featherweight. He's moving, he's got momentum, and he's clearly an absolute fucking destroyer. So yeah, some good fights obviously on the horizon for him. Moving on to the main event. This was a fucking fight. It was always going to be a great fight, but this was spectacular. Dominic Reyes against Yuri Prochazka. Again, fuck knows if I'm pronouncing that right. I can't even remember. But yeah, what can you say? I mean, Prochazka, I think, was the slight favourite coming into this, which is crazy considering Reyes fought for the belt in his last 2 fights, and in my opinion, actually beat John Jones. A lot of people have said it. I've watched it back, and Jones has had a couple of close fights. With Thiago, with obviously Alexander Gustafsson the first time they fought. But Dominic Reyes, for me, if anyone out of those guys actually did beat Jones, it was Dominic Reyes. But unfortunately, he's come back and he's had a fight against Jan Blachowicz for the title. Jan Blachowicz, however you pronounce it. Again, these Eastern European names fuck me. Nothing much you can say. I could say Joanna Jędrzejczyk, but that's only because it's been said 17 billion times by other people. So, But yeah, so Dominic Reyes fought Blakovic for the title. Obviously, once Jones stepped up to heavyweight, which we'll talk about shortly too. And yeah, lost in brutal fashion to Jan, the legendary Polish power. But yeah, now he's lost to another Eastern European. This was crazy. Both guys traded some huge shots. Yuri was hurt at one point. Reyes, if you watch it back, caught him with a peach of a left hand, and it definitely stumped him, stopped him dead in his tracks for a minute. But the thing is with Yuri, for whatever reason, he has got an insane gas tank. He's got like that Velasquez level of gas tank and cardio, where it's just like never ending pressure. It's coming at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you better be ready for it. And Reyes, we all joke and stuff about the fact that he's a great athlete, quotes unquotes, but he really is. And it's a shame. It's a shame that he's on a bit of a losing streak here, because he's a fantastic fighter and a great talent, and seems like a good dude as well. Which we always like to see good people do well, but did not do well here. Ended up in towards the end of the fight, ended up in a guillotine. He had Yuri in a guillotine on the mat, and obviously when he popped his head out with that ridiculous ponytail thing on top of his head, excuse me, when he popped out of the guillotine, he managed to get on top of Reyes, obviously, landed a couple of good shots there. Reyes was able to then get back to his feet, but a matter of seconds later, he was up against the cage, getting hit with elbows, and then Yuri finished him off with an absolutely stunning spinning back elbow. It was fucking insane. One of the best finishes you'll see this year in the UFC, if not of all time, really. Great. Put Reyes out. He hit the mat, and unfortunately, it looks like he also bashed his head as he hit the deck, which is never good. I hope he's okay. But Reyes, hopefully he comes back. I think the only matchup for him is Rakic, who's also in there in the top echelons of that division, who just beat Thiago Santos. Now, Rakic, you'd feel, would probably get the title shot after Teixeira fights Blakovic, but I can't see it happening now. Not with Yuri's finish. That was a spectacular. People are going to be talking about him. That's where the buzz is going to be. Rakic has got similar finishes. He's a great fighter. Can definitely challenge for the title. But his last fight was a little bit lackluster, and you understand it because of who he was facing. However, these knockout of the night performances do kind of matter when it comes to selling fights, and one would imagine that the UFC will go with Yuri to fight the winner of Glover versus Jan, which to me is going to be Jan, but we'll see what happens with that. I'm not entirely sure when they are fighting, but I believe that is the fight that's going to happen. And all credit to Glover, he's looked great recently, still doing it in his 40s, big him up. But yeah, I do think we're going to see a battle of Eastern Europe one way or another with those guys at the top, and we'll see what happens with that. As for Reyes, as I say, I think Rakic should be the obvious fight for him, but he probably needs a little bit of time out right now to gather himself and, definitely recover from that fight, because he took a lot of brutal shots in that fight. Both of them did, as I say, but really classy guys, both of these guys. And you never know. Reyes is still very early in his career as well, but they could meet again down the line if one of them was to go and pick up the title. Obviously, Yuri being the obvious choice there for the title shot. So yeah, we'll see. But all in all, great card from what I did watch. It's not one I'd stay up for. A lot of the time nowadays, I only stay up and watch pay-per-views live. So when I watch some of these fight nights, I do get a little bit of a different vibe, and it's not. It's not quite, the way I enjoy watching the pay-per-views live and sitting up all night with coffee and sugar-free Monster and whatnot. But yeah, speaking of that, let's get into my review of UFC 261. Now, I was, like everyone, super excited about this card. A little bit weary about the fact that the fans are back. I was talking on the Paul S podcast to Paul and Martin Johnson. Martin's had fights himself, he's actually got a decent record and stuff, and really great podcast. So if you get an opportunity, obviously it's going to be a little bit dated because it's prior to the event, but go back and listen to it, because we had a great time and a lot of cool opinions shared on there as well, even with regards to stuff for the future. So definitely go and check that out. But we were talking about fans being back and how great it is to have them back, but me and Paul were a little bit sad because we enjoy, like with the fight card at the weekend, no sound. You hear the fighters, you hear everything the corner's saying, you hear the effort going into the cage and stuff. is special. It's really been special, and also quite painful to listen to at times as well because it's fucking brutal. But yeah, we've really enjoyed it. So it was weird to have fans back. Also, obviously, Florida's a fucking wild place, and they've had so much COVID there as well. Really hope that everyone who went to the event was safe and no one got sick afterwards, man. Because as a planet, we still need to get rid of this fucking virus. So fingers crossed, no one came away from Jacksonville that night with any COVID, and it didn't cause any spikes or anything like that, because it's the last thing anyone needs right now. But yeah, let's get into it. Obviously, a fairly decent undercard, but the fight that stood out for me, I said it on Paul's podcast, was Randy Brown versus Alex Cowboy Oliveira, of course. Alex Oliveira is always good for a laugh. He's always entertaining, but he can be an absolute prick as well. It can be a real pain in the ass. He's been a dirty fighter in the past. He does silly things, like he's a character. He's always going to be worth a watch because he does do some really cool stuff. But I'm not the greatest fan. But Randy Brown, that is a serious guy right there at welterweight. I feel he's someone that can do damage. And, I'm not entirely sure how old he is, but I'm pretty sure that he's going to be around a while, and the only way is up for Randy Brown. Great submission in the first round. He just, from the second he walked in there, just looked like he meant fucking business. And yeah, really great end to the prelims. Great way to sell the pay-per-view if there was anyone left undecided, and why would there be, to be fair? But yeah, really great, absolutely perfect place on the card. Great performance. Big up Randy Brown. Gets the win, submission in the first round, just under 3 minutes, I believe. Moving on to the main card, first couple of fights. Wow, how weird. The card looked amazing. You have 3 title fights on this card for UFC 261, and it looks great on paper. Everyone was excited about it. The first fight on the card, Anthony Smith versus Jimmy Crute. Jimmy Crute, up and comer, very young. Can beat people a multitude of ways. Anthony Smith, a veteran, but only 32 years old. 50 fights at the age of 32. It's fucking crazy. He's younger than me. Which is, when I look at it and you look at how much he's done, and, he's had a shot at a title and he's fought all over the world in different promotions, and again, 50 fights. It's kind of nuts. I said on Paul's podcast that I felt experience would win him the fight. As I say, guys, it's very early in the morning. I felt experience would win him the fight. Jimmy Crute did look great. He looked really great in the fight. Anthony Smith was, pounding him with the left jab. Like, it was a beautiful shot. It was there for him all night, all the way through the first round. Jimmy Crute, though, was hitting Anthony with some brutal leg kicks. And obviously, when you're fighting off the jab, whether it's left-hand jab, right-hand jab, obviously Anthony Smith's firing his left-hand jab forward. His left leg has to be planted when he's firing that to get any sort of decent power to push the range on it. So, he was very susceptible to that leg kick, and we saw, I do believe if he would have carried on through the rounds, we could have seen some serious damage to Anthony Smith's leg, which is fucking ironic given how the fight went. So basically Anthony Smith throws a leg kick of his own, and as we've seen several times in MMA, whether it's Henry Cejudo or, Michael Chandler in Bellator, sometimes, even, to a certain degree, Conor McGregor as well, sometimes when you throw that low calf kick, it can hit that, I think it's called the peroneal nerve, and your leg just goes. It just goes. It shuts down your ankle, gives you like what they call drop foot, where, your foot just doesn't fucking work, basically. You put your foot down and your ankle rolls. You end up doing your ankle ligaments and getting sprained ankles and shit from it, twisting your ankle. That clearly happened to Jimmy Crute. Couldn't put any weight or pressure on it. Clearly wasn't feeling the pain because it was numb. But every time he tried to post on it, it was mad. What was really insane was as he got hit with it and he went down, he managed to land a fucking takedown. And had Anthony Smith in trouble on the ground as well. It was crazy to see. But obviously, Anthony Smith survived out the round. What's mad is Crute. There's an argument that Crute took that first round based on the takedown. I don't know what the scorecards were at the time of the stoppage, but you saw Jimmy Crute walk back to his corner and just that ankle just was not holding out at all. It was slipping to the side. It looked gross. It was fucked. It was completely and utterly fucked. And felt really bad for him when the fight was called off. But you can't let someone go out there and fight on one leg. You just can't, especially given the fact that he's so young. He's got so much potential. He's going to be back. He's going to be back 100%, and he's going to be an absolute menace at light heavyweight as well. He's someone that can really trouble these guys, and it's crazy. Obviously we just spoke about the card this previous weekend with Reyes, and I'm going to call him Alphabet because I'm going to call him Alf for Alphabet because he's got every letter of the alphabet in his fucking name. But Yuri, I'll just call him Yuri. Obviously we looked at that main event, but it's crazy that now Jones has gone. Light heavyweight is wide open, whereas obviously when he was there, it was just like it was him, and then everyone else. He's sort of like the Manchester United of the 1990s Manchester United of MMA sort of thing. It's just him and then a bunch of other people that might come along and do a little bit here and there. But now he's gone. It's a much more wide open division, and Jimmy Crute can be someone who takes advantage of that. I truly believe that he's got all of the talent in the world, all of the potential in the world, and hopefully there's no long lasting injury from that kick. It's just one of them things. Anthony Smith threw it. You're not even aiming for a particular place either because you don't know you're going to hit that nerve. You're just throwing leg kicks to slow your opponent down. But he only threw a couple, and he threw that one, and fuck me, did it have an effect. Which, funnily enough, brings us on to the next fight on the card. Uriah Hall versus Chris Weidman. Oh my god. On paper, this was something I was really excited to see. Uriah, I know, has been very up and down in his UFC career. He's had some spectacular knockouts. We all look at him as sort of like a computer game character. He's just got that mad fucking Tekken style to him sometimes. And you do feel with Uriah Hall that the biggest problem with him is his mental game. And he has spoken quite openly and honestly about that himself in the past. He lost to Chris Weidman. I think Weidman was the guy that beat him for the first time many years ago before they were even in the UFC. When Weidman was, just demolishing everyone basically up until he met Luke Rockhold. But so this was crazy. The result officially reads as a TKO in 17 seconds into round number 1. And Uriah Hall becomes the first person to win a fight without throwing a single punch or kick, I believe. It's quite crazy. So, what happened here? Well, Chris Weidman threw a leg kick. Again, it's a very popular thing now in the UFC to start by throwing leg kicks because everyone knows the damage they can do in slowing down their opponent. Obviously, Uriah Hall is someone that you definitely want to slow the fuck down. Chris Weidman comes out, throws a leg kick. I believe the first one, it connects with what looked just to be either the top of the shin or the knee of Uriah Hall. He kind of half checked it. Chris Weidman's leg snaps in half, breaks the entire lower half of the leg, pops around, and as he goes to post it and put weight on it, he steps back, and obviously, the bone's not there to support. So his entire lower leg bends in half. The fucking bone, sorry for anyone who's listening, but if you're gonna feel sick, turn it off now. The bone pierced the skin even as he hits the ground. Fully come out. The agony that he must have felt. I mean, I know the adrenaline takes over a certain amount, but absolutely insane injury. Probably worse than the obvious comparison, which would be when it happened to Anderson Silva when he fought against Chris Weidman, which is so ironic. With Anderson's one, he threw the kick and his leg snapped and he hit the floor, and obviously, he was in a lot of pain. But the one with Weidman, where it's the bone itself was torn through the muscle and through the skin and come out of the other side, that is just fucked. Unbelievable. And you could see Uriah Hall just was so disappointed with it. He wanted to have that fight. I hope it doesn't affect him too badly because, it does with some of these fighters. When they're in there with someone and that person gets injured, it's not the one, it's really not the one at all. You have to be a very dark kind of arsehole to take any kind of joy in something like that happening to your opponent. So I hope it doesn't affect Uriah. I hope he gets another fight again soon. Really demoralising, you train so hard to go up against someone who's already beaten you and try and get that win back on such a huge event as well. And even for Weidman as well, like training for all of that time to come out and essentially have a fight that one strike gets thrown and one person completely destroys themselves and the other person just stands there. It's bizarre, but a moment of history, something no fan will ever forget. We'll all remember where we were when we saw Chris Weidman break his leg, much like we'll remember the Anderson Silva fight as well. I don't know what happens next with Uriah Hall. There's a lot of talent in middleweight, so we will see. And as for Chris Weidman, I just hope he can. I hope he can recover. I hope he can get well as soon as possible. And if he's going to come back, if he's going to come back, he's going to come back. But it's been tough going for Weidman for a long time now. I mean, he was unstoppable up until he fought Chris Rockhold, and ever since then, I think he's only won 2 fights. 2 fights in about 5 years is not ideal, to say the least. But I'm a Weidman fan. I like him as a human being. He's a good guy. Godspeed. Hopefully he recovers well. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed for him and his family. 3 title fights. 3 title fights on this card. Now, usually when you have one of these cards and it's 3 title fights, it's a little bit of a worry that they're all going to be decisions and they're all going to drag on and you're going to end up sat up. From my perspective, as I say, I like to sit up to watch pay-per-views. I do have a little sleep on a Saturday evening and then I get up about 10 p.m, make some food and I plant myself in front of the TV. But from my perspective, when you have 3 title fights on a card, a lot of the time they'll go to decision and it just fucking drags the card out until 7 a.m. and it's just like, oh my God, why? But that did not happen here. Oh Lord, did that not happen here. First title fight on the card, women's flyweight fight between Valentina Shevchenko and Jessica Andrade. I made a point on the Paul S podcast that I believe Andrade is the first person to fight at all 3 weight classes for women. We have featherweight, but it's not really a weight class. It hasn't even got rankings. It's just something for Amanda to do when she's bored, basically. So Andrade obviously started at 135, moved down to 115, and now she's fighting at 125. I thought she'd give Shevchenko a little bit more of a fight than she did give her, but didn't work out that way. And Valentina Shevchenko just beat the absolute brakes off her. TKO round number 2, 3 minutes and 19 seconds into the second round. Brutal to watch. It got to the stage where where Shevchenko had full control of Andrade on the mat and was just pounding the shit out of her. And what can you do? When Shevchenko wants to put them crucifix style positions on you and everything else, it's insane. There's no getting out of it. There's no escape. The only fight, obviously, on the horizon for her would be Amanda Nunes. But if Nunes would fight her again or not is a different story. At the moment, there's plenty of people at 125 still coming up, but none of them even come close. I was kind of hopeful that we'd see, in the strawweight fight, I was hoping that the result would be slightly different and maybe Zhang Weili could have gone up to fight Shevchenko. I think that would be a pretty cool fight. Zhang is a little bit more naturally bigger than a lot of the strawweights, so that's a fight I would have liked to have seen. I'd still like to see, to be fair. But yeah, Shevchenko is head and shoulders above everyone else. It's absolutely fucking terrifying. No idea what she does next. Maybe she just stays at 125 and just John Jones is the division, just beats up everyone who comes along and just cracks on doing what she's doing. But yeah, a decent enough fight, but I think Andrade was 500 to 1 to win that. So not really any surprises there at all. What was surprising was the women's strawweight co-main event. It's crazy because I never doubted Rose as such, but I'm a big Weili Zhang fan. I think her fight against Joanna is a Hall of Fame fight that will stand the test of time. Absolutely incredible. I think she's an incredible fighter. I think she's a very good person as well. I'm glad after the fight that Rose apologised for some of the stuff that came out in the media with regards to China being a communist country and, that kind of thing. And, she did say it was nothing personal with Weili. She's a cool person and stuff. And I believe that, I'm firmly of the belief that you shouldn't judge people based on the actions of their governments and stuff like that, I think that's not fair. It's not kind. Weili doesn't tend to represent China as an institution or as a country or anything like that. You know, she flies her flag, but you know, she represents her people, and I think it's very important. She's a great role model to children, and she'll be showing a lot of kids in China what you can do if you believe in yourself and work hard. You know, so I'm a big Weili Zhang fan, and I was shocked at this result in a sense that I thought this was going to be a war. I thought this was going to be more like the Joanna fight, and not that I didn't believe in Rose, but you know, I really did believe in Weili. So to see her get knocked out in the first round, just over a minute into the first round, was insane. All credit to Rose. Beautiful head kick, absolutely perfect. Doesn't get better than that. Just spot on, just completely spot on. Amazing. We all know that Rose kind of lost the title via what was really a fluke for Andrade. You know, she was absolutely piecing her up in the first part of the fight, and she just got dropped on her head. It is what it is. There was no real... I don't think Andrade was planning on spiking her on her head. She was just going for the takedown. You know, it's one of them freak things that happens. And obviously Rose went and got that win back. But yeah, it's crazy because there are a lot of contenders at strawweight. Obviously, Joanna will probably be there for the rematch with Rose, but Rose has beat her twice. I really can't be fucked to watch that. You know, I really don't want to watch that fight again because I think it's going to be even worse. I think Rose will batter just batter her again. I think she really will just batter her again. You know, Rose was standing in the corner before the fight just saying, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best. And when she's on point with her mental game, Rose, she's unstoppable. You know, you can clearly tell, and I think she's spoken openly about it before, about some of her self-esteem issues and some of the stuff she's been through growing up, and you know, kind of having to look after herself and whatnot. And you know, the self-doubt in her must be incredible for her to have to stand there and tell herself that she's the best before a fight, when in reality we all can see it. But you know, whatever helped her get through, I suppose. And yeah, great victory for her. I don't know what happens with Weili from here on out. There's a lot of great fighters coming up. You know, Mackenzie Dern seems to be knocking on the door, for example. So maybe that's something that happens down the line. I don't know. But yeah, really great co-main event. Rose Namajunas is once again the women's strawweight champion, and I believe that makes her the first ever female fighter to regain a UFC title. So awesome stuff for Rose Namajunas. And yeah, we'll probably see a third match of her and Joanna. So it is what it is. Won't be that excited about it personally, but you know, there we go. One thing I was excited about was the rematch at welterweight. Now, I mentioned earlier I was on the Paul S podcast, and when we spoke about it, I said I wasn't that fussed about watching this fight, but when Martin Johnson was on the podcast, he sat there with us and explained why he was excited for it and the variables between, you know, having a full camp and not, because obviously he's trained and fought himself, you know, and done weight cuts himself. So once, if you listen back to the podcast, once he started talking about it, I then got excited about the fight, and I was like, you fucking sold this fight to me, man. Like, I'm on board now, like I'm all in. And I was, you know, when Jorge walks out to the Scarface music, it's quality, you know, he's a character. He is a good fighter. There's no doubts about it. He is a really good fighter. He's had some great scraps. Obviously, the Ben Askren thing was, again, a little bit of a fluke thing. He did plan it, so it wasn't like he did it by accident. But you know, 9 times out of 10, that doesn't happen. You know, so yeah, Jorge Masvidal, he's a character. You got to love him. Really cool guy. You noticed it after the fight as well, which we'll get to. Just what a cool guy he is. But yeah, I was all in. I was all in for this. I am a huge Kamaru Usman fan. A lot of people don't like him. I don't know why. Well, I know why some people don't like him. It's because anytime a black person succeeds, they want to pull him apart. But be that as it may, for Colby Covington fans, Kamaru Usman is a great, great, great fighter. The only thing that ever gave me real doubt about him, to be honest with you, was the fight against Damian Maia, where Damian Maia did have his back, and for whatever reason the referee stood it up. It was very, very bizarre. And had Maia beat Usman that day, who knows how much of Usman's career would be different right now, you know. But he didn't, you know. It is what it is. We are where we are, and Usman just keeps proving himself. He just steps it up to another level every single time he fights. You know, he had the fight against Woodley, the title fight. obviously Woodley now isn't Woodley as he was when he first won the title, and I think that fight was obviously the change for him. But Woodley was coming off of a great fight against Darren Till, where he put Till on his ass. Till never even landed a shot, and he was able to get the finish with what I believe from memory was a Darce choke, and yeah, like just riding high. Tyron Woodley was riding high. And Usman came out and absolutely fucking demolished him for 5 rounds, demoralised him, dragged him to them. Like Tyron Woodley's takedown defense is incredible, and Usman made him look like nothing. Like it was an absolutely masterful performance. Obviously he's had the fight with Colby, which was a superb fight. It often happens when you have two seasoned grapplers going up against each other. It does turn into a bit of a boxing match, and that's kind of what it was. But with some kicks and stuff, so it was just great. What a great fight! Whatever you want to say about Colby, you trust me. Whatever you want to say about Colby, feel free to say around me. I think the man's a piece of shit, but. That fight was absolutely insane. Colby Covington is superbly talented. And his fight with Usman will stand the test of time. For me, it's one of my favourite fights. But Usman, for me, that night was just, wow. He was incredible. And, yeah, I became even more of a fan than I already was. And, yeah, that was a really great win. Obviously, he then had, I believe, then after that was the Masvidal fight. Obviously, Masvidal had the whole BMF thing and everything else, and riding high on the social media waves and whatnot, and got himself that fight. And yeah, it was it was on short notice. He stepped in for Gilbert Burns on 6 days' notice. Had to cut like 20 odd pounds, and yeah, it does make a difference. It clearly does make a difference. But Usman done what he had to do. He went out there and, acted like a professional, wrestled the guy for 5 rounds and got the win. He then comes up against Gilbert Burns, who was tearing through everyone in the division and absolutely fucking weighed him in. Usman, as someone who's come in as a wrestler, has obviously been doing the work with Trevor Whitman, doing the work with Henry Hooft and whoever else he might be having time with in his camps. And yeah, just completely and utterly obliterated Gilbert Burns. He did get clipped himself. He got clipped in the first round. But, it happens. Usman is hittable. We saw that with the Covington fight. He's definitely hittable. We saw it even with Masvidal in this fight. Masvidal landed a few shots on him in the second fight. But, he came out, he made the adjustment, stuck to his fundamentals as Trevor Whitman's been telling him to do, and just absolutely KO'd Gilbert Burns. And then, obviously come to this rematch. He's staying active as well. Very impressive that he's staying active. He's been fighting more than anyone else at welterweight. He's come out against Jorge Masvidal. First fight back with fans. And, I will touch on some of the stuff that the fans are up to that day as well. But first fight back with fans, obviously added pressure. Biggest card of the year so far. I say that. I think it was bigger than the Poirier McGregor card, just simply for the fact that it was packed out with fans and there was 3 title fights on it. Didn't sell as well, obviously, but it was a bigger card in my opinion. In Jorge's home state, I know Kamaru trains there, but he's not really a Florida guy, and Florida's attitude towards people who class themselves as foreign or immigrants or whatever isn't always great. So Usman could have definitely expected a hostile crowd that night, but yeah, absolutely beautiful knockout in the second round. First round was good, back and forth. Usman was definitely looking like the better fighter, but you just with Jorge, a couple of shots can put your lights out, and he's a great striker. So you can never be complacent or think that the fight's done. And obviously Jorge's never really been finished like that either. I think he's been submitted once. All his other losses are decisions, but he got knocked the fuck out. Yeah, absolute beautiful right hand, put him out, and then obviously a couple of hammer fists that were clearly super necessary at the end there to put him out. And yeah, it was great. What a night of fights! Unbelievable. Yeah, the hostility towards Usman and in particular Weili Zhang, it makes me somewhat uncomfortable. It's just something I'm not a fan of. If you don't like someone because you don't like someone, that's cool, but there's not really that much reason, especially to not like Weili. She hasn't said a word. She's never said a word about anyone. She just goes about her business, and I think we can all tell that, we know why. Uh, we know why Asian fighters. There were some on the undercard as well. We know why they were getting booed, and that shit needs to change because it's not good. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for us as a people, and it's not good for them at all either. The other thing with the fans on the night was the Jake Paul stuff. Ignore that prick. I'm going to sit here and talk about him now for a minute or so, but ignore the prick. He's there, and you've got fighters in the cage. I believe it was during the Anthony Smith and Jimmy Crute fight, where people were just there, like chanting "fuck Jake Paul," and you got two of the world's best light heavyweights in the cage fighting each other. You haven't been able to go to a UFC event for over a year. Show some respect to the people in the cage. Stop chanting at Jake Paul. I mean, yeah, fuck Jake Paul. Fuck that guy. No, seriously, fuck that guy. But, don't give him the satisfaction. Do not give him the satisfaction of not paying attention to the warriors that are actually in that cage that have been training their entire fucking lives and putting it all on the line in a real fight. Not some stupid celebrity boxing match, but a real fucking fight at the highest level. Don't sit there and disrespect them by cheering for Jake Paul. Fuck that shit. Fuck that shit off. Whether you're angry with him and you hate him or whatever, that's what he wants. He wants your attention because then he wants you to go and spend money on watching these shitty little fights against people who've never had proper fights. And Ben Askren. It's insane. To give that guy so much attention is mad. I'm quite glad that DC went over and bitched him out. At the same time, he shouldn't really give him the attention. Let's be honest, anyone who knows anything about combat sports knows that DC, if he wanted to, he could literally bend Jake Paul up like a pretzel and have his way with him. Let's just put it that way. It's absurd that someone like Jake Paul would have the audacity to call out an Olympian and a champ in the UFC. Like, come on, man. And let alone someone who's 100 pounds heavier than him. Just go away. Just go away. Absolute clown. But yeah, that did disappoint me with the live fans, with some of the reaction towards some of the Asian fighters, and obviously the reactions towards Jake Paul as well. Just stop giving that kind of attention. But be that as it may, UFC 261, what an incredible night. One that will live long in the memory for obvious reasons. Not just the performances, but the freak injuries and stuff like that. Something we will never ever forget. The next fight night coming up was meant to be on the 8th of May, and it was going to be Sandhagen versus Dillashaw, and that's obviously been cancelled because, or the fights might still be on, but Dillashaw's out. A lot of fighters have pulled out recently of various different fights, and so I'm not entirely sure exactly what's going to happen with that card this coming weekend, but next weekend we're going to be having UFC 262. At the Toyota Center, which I believe is in Texas, Houston or Dallas, I can't remember now. But yeah, really, really incredible card. Gonna have a look at some of the fights on there now, just putting it up. Early prelims are here. Lando Venata's on the early prelims against Mike Grundy, UK's own Mike Grundy, out of Team Carbon. Big shouts out to Mike Grundy. You always got to support the English fighters. This is actually a good opportunity for him to get back on the win sheet. He's had a difficult time as of late, and he's struggled in his first few UFC fighters, and I think he struggles at the level. But Mike Grundy is a great talent, so all power to him. Hopefully he comes up with a win. Lando Venata's obviously a great talent as well. He's had some really entertaining fights in the UFC, so this one will be a war. That's my one to watch with regards to the early prelims. There's a couple of other decent fights on there as well, but that's the one. That is the one right there. Lando Venata versus Mike Grundy. You've got on the prelims, Andrea Lee against Antonina Shevchenko. So that's the other Shevchenko sister. That will be interesting. You've also got Schnell versus Bontorin. That's a decent fight. Ronaldo Jacare Souza against Andre Muniz. Good fight, but the standout fight for me is Jack Hermansson versus Edmund Shabazian. Obviously, Edmund Shabazian, all the talent in the world, has got a loss now, so we'll see how he bounces back. And Jack Hermansson's obviously looking to regain some momentum as well that he had up until about a year or 18 months ago. Yeah, really, really great fight in the middleweight division there. That's a really important one. Definitely my pick of the prelims. Jack Hermansson, Edmund Shabazian. Yeah, looking forward to that with great interest. It's again, UFC, all credit to him. This is a truly, truly fantastic card. Love it. Looking ahead at the main card, we kick things off with Shane Burgos versus Edson Barboza at featherweight. Edson looked good at featherweight, he looked full of energy and stuff. So, maybe this is more of a long-term home for him. I don't know if he's still got what it takes to move up to the top of the division, but we'll see. This will be really, really great test for Shane Burgos and see where he goes in the future. Great fighter, 13-2 record. So yeah, we'll see. That's a great fight to open up with. We've also got Caitlin Chukagian, who I think is a really talented fighter. It's just a shame that she lives at a time when Valentina Shevchenko exists. She's taking on Viviane Araujo. I can't say her name. I'm butchering things again. It's 6 a.m. I'm too tired for this shit. And then, our 3 top fights. I'm so excited. I am so excited about these top fights here. Tony Ferguson is back, taking on Beneil Dariush. Dariush is the dark horse of the lightweight division, in my opinion. That guy can really, really go places. Beneil Dariush against Tony Ferguson. Tony has to win this fight. He can't not win this fight. If he doesn't win this fight, I don't see a way back for him. If he comes out and does something, if he comes out and does a Tony Ferguson and does a wild submission or a wild finish or something, this could be fun. This could be real fun, and Tony could get back on the map. But Beneil Dariush has a real opportunity to put himself in title contention here, and I don't say that lightly either. He is a great talent. He's a great fighter. He's had some great wins, and Tony Ferguson, unfortunately at the moment, looks to be like the gatekeeper. He'll need to win this to make sure that doesn't become the case. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm going Tony Ferguson with this one. I'm gonna make my prediction and go Tony Ferguson, just because we all love T-Ferg, we all love El Kukui. But yeah, it's could be a long night for him. Speaking of long nights, the co-main event, I believe, for the first time ever, is going to be a 5-round fight. From what I remember reading, Leon Edwards against Nate Diaz in the co-main event is going to be a 5-rounder, which is interesting. I don't know why they've done it, but this fight in itself could main event a pay-per-view as far as I'm concerned. I spoke earlier in the podcast about how Eddie Hearn puts together all of these boxing fights with a non-title fight of the number 5 guy versus the number 10 guy, and expects everyone to pay £20 for it. Well, this is a UFC welterweight main event of Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz, and I would pay £20 for this event. Luckily enough, I believe it's on BT Sports, so those of us in the UK won't have to. But yeah, Leon Edwards against Nate Diaz as a co-main event, 5 rounds. Fuck me, I am so excited for this. So excited for this. I think Leon Edwards gets it done. And I believe we see Nate Diaz get knocked out for the first time in his career. That's just my prediction. Leon Edwards is much more of a natural welterweight. Nate's obviously spent most of his career at lightweight. He is a big guy, but he doesn't. When I say he's a big guy, I mean he's a tall guy. He doesn't have the frame of a natural welterweight. Not like his brother, or definitely not like Leon Edwards. And Leon has looked in incredible shape as of late, just in physical shape. But even when he came out against Bilal, he looked determined, he looked fresh, he looked ready to snap. He was on it, and I was gutted that that fight didn't go anywhere. And obviously, what happened with the eye pokes and stuff. But Leon Edwards, man, it's his time. It is his time. He's got to step up and take what's his. If Nate gets the win, Nate fights Usman. That's as simple as that. I mean, we're looking at Kamaru Usman. We're looking at him probably having the Colby Covington rematch, which will be a good fight, I'm sure. I can't see Covington beating Usman, not with the way things are. I could be surprised, and we could be looking at one of the greatest trilogies of all time, in which case, I'm more than happy for that to happen. But yeah, I see Usman holding on to the title against Covington and then fighting the winner of this fight. Leon Edwards definitely deserves his title shot at this point. He has deserved it anyway. There's also obviously the option of the Masvidal fight for Leon Edwards. That would sell big, particularly if it was held over here. That would be fucking huge. But yeah, Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz. If Nate wins, don't be surprised. Do not be surprised if he walks straight into a title shot. He will be beating, the number 2 or number 3 welterweight in the world anyway. So you can't really argue that he doesn't deserve it. But also, just from a box office perspective, Nate Diaz versus Kamaru Usman, sign me the fuck up to that. If anything, that's probably what the UFC are hoping will happen here. They know Leon Edwards isn't a big draw. I love the guy, but he's not. Simple as that. He just isn't. Usman's not a particularly big draw, despite the fact of how fucking good he is. So I believe that the UFC would be hoping that Nate Diaz actually goes out there, in true Nate Diaz style and puts on a triangle or chokes a guy out of a guillotine or something and gets the win, and then they've got cause to put him up against Usman on a massive fight, maybe the end of the year pay-per-view, because I'm reading that Usman wants to fight again in June, which is insane. To fight 3 times in 3 months to defend your title, that would be absolutely fucking ridiculous. But yeah, Usman seems to be stepping up to new levels that we're yet to see in the welterweight division, so who's to say he won't do it? But yeah, for me, in this one, I do believe Leon Edwards gets it done. I believe he's going to knock Nate Diaz out, and I would be, all I'm going to say is watch out for the left elbow of Leon Edwards, the left elbow over the top. That's my shot of the fight, so bear that in mind. The main event I can't call. I'm very, very torn with the main event for UFC 262. Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. Charles Oliveira has had a bit of a mixed bag at points in his career where he's had great wins, but he's also followed them up with losses. And, then other times where he's had losses and followed them up with a bounce back great win. He does seem to be on momentum. He does seem to be on a tear. He definitely deserves a title shot. Had Conor McGregor not, decided not to come back, I believe Oliveira should have had the title shot against Poirier. I don't think they would have gone that route. I reckon it would have been Poirier versus Chandler. And Oliveira would have got robbed, but obviously with Poirier being tied up with the trilogy fight with Conor McGregor, which is also going to be huge. This is a perfect opportunity for these guys to fight it out. The odd man out here is obviously Justin Gaethje in the lightweight division. He gets left behind, but what can you do? It is what it is. Not everyone can fight for a title. Gaethje's last fight, he fought for a title and he lost very convincingly. So he should probably have one more fight before he gets back into the title mix. With a fighter like Gaethje, you're looking at, McGregor could go and beat Poirier, and, whoever wins this title fight, for 262 might be injured or be out. You could be looking at Poirier versus Gaethje by the end of the year, possibly for like an interim title or something like that, So Gaethje shouldn't worry too much. I'm sure whoever he fights next is going to be headline blockbuster fight, which is what he deserves because he is an absolutely fucking amazing fighter. And deserves to be paid. So you never know. We could see that McGregor Gaethje fight at some point. But for the time being, the two that they've picked: Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler. As I say, Oliveira's had a bit of a mixed bag, and Chandler's obviously only on his second fight in the UFC. For anyone who says he doesn't deserve a title shot, you're fucking insane. You're actually mad. He's got the opportunity to make history here. Following the footsteps of Eddie Alvarez. Eddie Alvarez came over, a Bellator champion, won the UFC title. He could really stamp his authority here. It does make things interesting on a broader scope, though, because obviously Chandler lost his title to, I believe it was Pitbull in Bellator, who was the champ over there. And yeah, it does make it interesting. If Chandler wins the UFC title, it does make it interesting as to who's the best. For the record, I think Poirier beats them all. I think the only person that beats Poirier at this point is possibly, and I say this, a 30% chance is Conor McGregor. Just because of the fight IQ and the adjustments that he can make and shaking off the ring rust and stuff. If he doesn't beat Poirier this time, then I think it's over for Conor McGregor in the UFC, quite honestly. As Khabib said, you don't have 2 primes. You have 1 prime, and that's it. But we'll see. We'll see with that. That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, Michael Chandler came out in his first fight in the UFC. Done damage, man. Done some serious fucking damage. Absolutely sparked out Dan Hooker. And who's to say that Michael Chandler cannot go on to become UFC champion of the world at lightweight? Interesting to see. I can't call it. The styles are very different. Charles Oliveira's got great striking. Really has got great striking. He's, a lot more in the vein of a Tony Ferguson, for example. Great striking, great jiu-jitsu. Not necessarily known for his wrestling, but he can grapple. Obviously, with his great jiu-jitsu, that becomes an excellent defense for some of the wrestling as well. So, yeah, he's a different kind of fighter to Chandler, who's more of that, as McGregor once described it, as a stocky wrestler with an overhand. That is how you could perfectly describe Chandler, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, because the style does work and it does win fights and it does win titles. Clearly, Eddie Alvarez was the same. So, yeah, interesting to see. I am going to go. Oh, it's difficult. It's difficult, this one. I am going to go Michael Chandler by knockout. Yeah, I just see it happening. I think it's destiny. I think Michael Chandler cements his place in the Hall of Fame as one of the greatest lightweights to ever live. I would love to see him fight Khabib. I would love to see Oliveira fight Khabib. I'd love to see anyone fight Khabib, to be honest. Fucking anyone. Literally anyone. Jake Paul. Definitely Jake Paul. But yeah, Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler. I'm going Michael Chandler. I think it's destiny. I think he's up there with the best of all time. But yeah, I'm happy to be proved wrong, because Charles Oliveira deserves it as well, and yeah, we'll see what happens. Obviously, this fight's taking place in May. You've got Poirier versus McGregor in July. One would imagine that Gaethje would possibly get the first title shot. I don't know. I think if McGregor wins, it's hard not to give it to him. Then again, if Poirier wins, it's hard not to give it to him as well. But it's crazy. It's crazy. Lightweight, once again, lightweight and welterweight, obviously always going to be the two most talent-stacked divisions in the UFC. One of the reasons for that is because most of the people that fight in those divisions walk around at the average male weight. Everyone's just like, oh, why are those two divisions always so packed? Just like, well, because that's the average weight of a human being. That's where people walk around at. Most bigger guys' natural weight is at about 185, 190, and they cut down to 170. Likewise, a lot of other guys weigh around 170 and they cut down to 155. It's just the average size of human beings, and that's why you end up with the most there, because that's the size of most people. So it's just basic genetics and math, really. Bro science, actually. We'll call that bro science, because I did just come up with that bullshit off the top of my head. I'm not even sure that's real, but it sounds real to me, so fuck it. We live in a world where whatever's real in your head is apparently the right thing. So yeah, it's a great time to be a UFC fan, and yeah, we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks with the events and stuff. Just looking even further forward into the summer, you've got later on in May, you've got Rob Font versus Cody Garbrandt. Great fight. That's a really great fight. Looking forward to that. A couple of really cool fights on the undercard there as well, so that will be good. UFC 263 is apparently booked for the 12th of June. Israel Adesanya against Marvin Vettori, with the co-main event being the flyweight title rematch, Davison Figueiredo against Brandon Moreno. We've also got Damian Maia on that card against Bilal Muhammad. That's a great fight. Paul Craig against Jamahal Hill. Again, a great fight. Big up Mr. Hill. Clearly, we're related somewhere back in the day. Drew Dober is coming back against Brad Riddell. I believe that fight was supposed to happen on one of the recent pay-per-views. I think 260 maybe, or 261. So yeah, that one's up, and that's for UFC 263. Later on in the summer, Cyril Gane is booked to fight Volkov, and then obviously on July the 10th, you've got Poirier versus McGregor, and the co-main event has been announced as Gilbert Burns versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So summer is lining up to be absolutely huge for UFC. Fuck knows what's happening with boxing. As I say, Fury versus AJ is something that's supposed to be happening, but will it ever get done? Who fucking knows? It's not actually been announced. It's just been announced that they have a contract to fight. No dates have been announced or anything like that. But obviously with the reopening of society and stuff, one would imagine that, by August time, they'd be more than happy to stick at least 70,000 people in Wembley. So, yeah, a great summer ahead for sports fans, unless, like me, you're a fan of Liverpool, in which case, it's just going to be a summer of being miserable and a shit season. Obviously, we've got England playing in the Euros. The Euros are going to be held all over Europe. The final's going to be at Wembley and stuff. So, a lot of cool stuff happening this summer. I'm sure there's people that are fans of golf and other stuff that listen to this going, yeah, but what about it? Listen, fuck your sport, I don't care. But no, in all seriousness, brighter days are coming. Things are looking up, not just in the MMA world, but in life in general. So, yeah, thank you guys for listening very much to my ramblings on for the last God knows how long. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this solo episode of the Over the Hill podcast. Don't forget to follow, like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And keep your emails coming in to the Over the Hill podcast at gmail.com, and that includes your confessions and dilemmas and everything else. Got another special guest lined up for next week's show. I'm really happy that I was able to sit down and do a solo show for you guys, though. It's been really great. It's been really great, and yeah, I'm gonna go off for breakfast now and enjoy the rest of my week. So catch you guys next week on the flip side. In the meantime, stay safe and take care of each other. Peace.